Welcome to the TransformationCoach.me podcast. I'm your host, Adam Shively, and I'm on a 1 million pound mission. I've personally lost over 100 pounds, and I've applied what I've learned from my own transformation journey to help my hometown clients lose over 35,000 pounds in just 5 years. Now, I'm on a mission to produce over 1 million pounds of results by delivering weekly tips, motivation, and my best transformation strategies to my podcast listeners, blog readers, and everybody I interact with through social media and my online coaching programs. The perfect time to start your transformation is now. So let's do this. Hello again, my friends. What is up? It's your buddy Adam here for another episode of the TransformationCoach.me podcast, episode 46. Today we're talking about discovering your ordinary superpowers with my good friend, Mark Henson. This is a high energy episode. I'm going to warn you up front. Mark and I are old buddies. We share a similar passion for life and for business and for helping people. There's a real synergy in this one. I think you're going to like it a lot. Mark is the founder and chief imagination officer for Sparkspace located in Columbus, Ohio. He is also the author of one of my favorite new books, Ordinary Superpowers, Unleash the Full Potential of Your Most Natural Talents. In this episode, we dive into a lot of stuff. I get Mark to tell me the story of what lit the fire for him to write this book and help change the way we all use our ordinary superpowers. I also talked about what exactly an ordinary superpower is. All right, he gave us a 4-step test for finding your ordinary superpowers and much, much more. He even gives away a free chapter of his book to our podcast listening audience. And we're going to give away 5 copies of his book with a special challenge at the end of the episode. So listen in close, take good notes, and without further ado, here's my interview with Mark Henson. All right, everybody, I am super psyched because today I have one of my good friends and the author of Ordinary Superpowers, Mark Henson, on the podcast, and we are going to bring it. We're going to show you how to discover your ordinary superpowers and start building some momentum right away. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam, for having me. This is exciting. You're one of the podcasts I listen to on a regular basis. I've been in your programs. My abs are coming back because of you. I owe you a lot, so I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And Mark and I, just to give you guys a little bit of a background, Mark and I have known each other for several years now. We've been in some entrepreneurial coaching programs together, and we bounce ideas back and forth off of each other. We've got a good little powerful synergy going, so the energy will be high, just a fair warning. But a few years back, I can't remember the exact timeline, we were both kind of working on our books. I was working on my book, Mark was working on his book, and we'd bounce ideas back and forth. And I felt since that moment, we've been on a similar path of just having a passion to share our story. And I really, as I read Mark's book, Ordinary Superpowers, I just felt that burning desire that he wanted to share a message. There's no fluff. There's no wasted energy in that book. It's 115 or so pages of just pure awesomeness, pure energy, and there's a lot of passion behind that. So, Mark, I wanted you to start off and just tell us a little bit about the story that lit that fire. What lit that fire to make you want to bring this message to the world?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, I have to say that you wrote your book and got it done in like a month or two. It took me a year and a half. So that kind of shows you the difference between either your work ethic and mine, or your passion and mine. I'm not exactly sure which, but I was always very jealous that you got yours done so fast. My book came out of the last several years of my life and my business have been this kind of weird, I would call it limbo, for lack of a better term. I have been running a business called Sparkspace, which is a business and executive retreat center where we host business meetings, we host personal and professional development workshops, and it was a passion business of mine from the very beginning. I've always been really into that kind of thing. I love helping teams and individuals bring their best self to work and to life. And so I created a space to do that. And we've been going for 17 years. Rewind a little bit from here, about 5-6 years ago, somewhere in there, I just started losing my passion for that business. I actually joined this coaching program that you mentioned. I was doing everything I could to try to light my fire again. And I was waking up every day. I was not feeling particularly motivated. There were many days I didn't want to go to work anymore. I would get up and, I set up my business to where it would run without me. So I started skipping out on my business quite a bit and just checking out. And I was still going through this coaching program. I was doing some other things in terms of just trying to figure out how to light my spark again. And one of the things that I hit on was focusing on my what I now call ordinary superpowers. The coaching program that we belong to refers to something similar called unique abilities, where you have these things about you that you're very good at. You're better at than most people, and they help you succeed. They help you excel. And I figured at that time, if I couldn't do anything else, if I couldn't get motivated to do anything else, I should just at least spend time doing the things that really I enjoy doing, that I'm good at, and that maybe I have a little bit of good results or impact with. And so that's what I did. I spent a lot of time just focusing on the things that I'm good at. And for me, that's brainstorming new ideas, simplifying things, and writing. I love to write. I'm actually a pretty good writer. I've been writing forever. So I poured my energy into those things. And I started coming out of that funk by doing that. And I started shaving off other pieces of my life that weren't working so well. And I focused more and more on my ordinary superpowers and realized that that was one pathway out of that funk that I was feeling. And I've come to find too, like, this is a part of the story that I've actually just recently revealing, I think, to the world, is that funk I was in, there's a word for that, and it's called depression. And so it took me a long time to recognize and acknowledge that what I was in for a long time was a low-grade depression. It wasn't completely debilitating. I was able to function, but I had lost complete passion for anything. I was just floating through life, just not exactly excited about much of anything at all. And so now, the combination of focusing on my superpowers and getting some outside help through some counseling and getting my health and fitness and wellness back on track, all those things combined are helping me get back into what I refer to as a superpowered life.
That's awesome. One thing that I really want to highlight is the phrase loss of passion, because I know a lot of people, our ego won't allow us to admit that we're experiencing depression,
right.
and that is something that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. But just saying, if you can sit and think, all right, I've been in a funk. Have I lost some passion for what I do? Have I lost some passion for certain relationships? Have I lost some passion for fitness or for just my daily routine in general? And how do we get that back? And I also love the fact that you kind of flipped the script a little bit, where a lot of people work on their perceived weaknesses. And instead of doing that, you focus on what you're already good at and where you have passion, and built momentum from that. So I think those are really key things that we can hone in on, because I know a lot of people are out there feeling that funk right now, and not the funk in a good way. They're feeling the funk of depression and loss of passion. So I hope you guys are taking notes out there on those. So real quick, I want you to dive a little bit deeper on exactly how you define an ordinary superpower.
Yeah, happy to do that. The idea of an ordinary superpower, there's a couple of ways to look at it. And in a minute here, I'll share with you 6 questions that you can ask yourself to help define your superpower. But to me, an ordinary superpower these are those natural talents and abilities that you have that pass a 4-part test, basically. As you identify all the things that you might be very good at, that you might have strengths that you might excel in, a few tend to rise to the top when you apply this simple 4-part test. And that test is, number 1, does it come naturally to me? Is it an ability, a talent, a skill that comes naturally to me? Now, I don't believe it's necessarily something you were born with. It could be something you've developed along the way or has awakened in you along the way. But right now in your life at this present moment, it's something that just feels natural to you. It comes out of you without a whole lot of effort, and you're just naturally good at it. So that's the first part of the test. The second part of the test is, am I better at this than most people I know? So as you look around your circle of family, friends, the circles and community that you belong to, does this talent or ability seem to be at a higher level in you than anybody else? This is one of those few times in life where it is totally okay to compare yourself to other people, because you're trying to figure out what helps differentiate you. Where do you have the most impact in your world? And one way to do that is to look at, well, where do I have more of that than other people get? So are you better at it than most is the second part of the test. The third part of the test is, does it help people? I always say it can help you along the way too, but it should definitely be helping other people in their lives, in their journeys as well. So does that ability, talent, or skill help other people in some way and can help you along the way as well? And then the fourth part of the test, which I think is an uber important part of the test, is, do you actually enjoy using that talent? And I always say that fixing technology problems is something for me that on the surface might appear as a superpower, but it doesn't pass all four parts of the test for me because it comes naturally to me. I'm a natural problem solver. I'm better at solving technology problems than most people in my circle. It definitely helps other people. You know, I help my parents, I help my family, I help my company, I help our guests and clients at Sparkspace fix technology problems. But when it comes to that fourth part of the test, do I enjoy it? I hate it. I do not enjoy fixing technology problems, even though I'm very good at it. So to me, it has to pass all four parts of the test in order to be a superpower. Like for me, brainstorming and coming up with new ideas and exploring new stuff, that really does pass all four parts of the test for me. So bam, that's one of my superpowers.
Yeah, and I think one of the real danger zones that we have, and this is a key realization that I had as I was reading this section of your book, was the perceived superpower that might pass the first three, but not the fourth. That's the dangerous one, where we can waste a lot of time and energy. And those are usually the things where the answer usually is, oh, I could make a bunch of money doing this, or it's
right.
You know, things like that, but you don't actually enjoy it. You can waste a lot of time and energy and effort on things like that. So that's the trap you don't want to fall into. And Mark really dives into that in the book. So I want you guys to pay extra close attention to that as you pick up his book and read it, as you're all going to do.
But you know, Adam, that's that you just nailed sort of why I wrote the book. Is for those people that kind of get in those points of their life where they feel stuck, they feel lost, they feel in limbo because they've possibly been pursuing a path that doesn't match up with their superpowers, because they've been chasing money, or they've been chasing success, or they've been doing what their parents thought they should do, or whatever. I spoke to a group of it was the Columbus Asian Indian Business Association just last week, and several people in that room came up to me afterwards and they said, I was basically told by my parents that I should pursue a career in X or Y or Z, and what really lines up with them is A or B or C, completely different from what their culture or their parents thought was best for them. And so now they're hitting that point in their lives where they're like, I kind of want to do something that lights me up rather than just something that helps me, buy a bigger house or a bigger car.
Yeah, that's such a huge point, because I feel like so many people just live their life out there doing what they feel like they're supposed to be doing, whether it's their parents or society or whatever. It's like, oh, I got a raise, so I'm supposed to buy a bigger house and a nicer car and spend more money, or, get a trophy wife or whatever,
right.
And it's like, you set the rules of the game of life, and we are in charge of doing that. And why not really feel like we're in control and we're passionate and loving every single day and every single minute of what we're doing? So I feel like that was another huge message that came across with the book and kind of supercharged my superpowers for me. And speaking of superpowers, I wanted to give our listeners some examples. I wanted you to kind of go through your superpowers and some examples of how you use them. And then I want to go through mine that I discovered through the process that you put me through in the book.
Oh, you're way ahead of me. See, I was going to ask you what your superpowers are. So,
Yes.
all right. So my superpowers, I've already hit on those a little bit. Exploring new things, which is just about anything that has to do with exploring something new. So that could involve brainstorming. It could also involve travel, like being in a new place that I've never been before. I love new experiences. I always sort of crave the new stuff. I always tell my wife, I would live in a new house every 2 years if she'd let me, because I just like new experiences and new environments. She would kill me if I did that, because that is not her superpower, and she likes the more safety and security and planning things out. And I'm like, let's go buy a new house, you know? So that's one for me. Another one is simplifying things. I am always seeking to simplify, and part of that comes from, like, my brain cannot handle a lot of complexity, so I naturally try to simplify everything. In some ways, you could say I try to dumb everything down, because then I can understand it. But that was one for me that took a while for me to understand that is actually a special power, because I thought I was just doing it because I can't understand big, complex things and I need to break it down. Well, it turns out that there's a lot of other people that don't understand big, complex things, and they like things in smaller chunks and to be able to understand things in a more simple way. And when that light bulb went off, I was like, oh, wow, that's one I can really use in my writing and in my speaking and when I help other people. I mean, if you already hit on it in the book, this book could have been 250, 300 pages. And if I'd gone to a traditional publisher to do it, they probably would have made me write that much. Yep. Which is 100 pages more than I wrote. I wrote what I felt needed to be in the book and nothing more. I tried to keep it as simple and straightforward and still kind of fun to read, without all that extra fluff. So I really used my superpower when it came to writing this book of keeping things simple, keeping them straightforward, making it very understandable. And then finally, writing and speaking is one of my superpowers as well, which has taken me a long time also to acknowledge and say, you know what, that is something I'm very good at. And I think that's one of the hard parts for people, is to say, I know back in the back of my mind that I might be good at some of these things, but I just have a hard time admitting that out loud. And I think part of it is because then you have to own it, especially if you've spoken it to somebody else. You say, these are the things I'm good at. They start looking at you like, all right, so when are you going to do that? Right? Yeah. And you start looking at yourself like, am I really using those things that I'm really good at? Or am I wasting that gift? And I could be using it a lot more and being more proactive and having a better impact. It kind of puts that pressure on you and a little bit of that fear of success into your heart and your mind, that if I do this, if I use these powers, my life might actually change somewhat. And I think sometimes we're uncomfortable with that. And then through the process of even writing the book, I discovered a superpower that has been in my life for a long time, but I never recognized it as a superpower until I really dug deep and did this evaluation of myself. And I found out that I like to include the unincluded. I hate it when anyone is outside of a circle looking in, and you can tell they really want to be there, and they've been excluded by the circle somehow. So whether that's a simple conversation in a room full of people where there's someone on the outside, or it can go as far as, people that are sort of forgotten or lost in society too. But even just simply day to day, like I try to involve people, I try to pull people in to what's happening. And because I just hate to see that. I hate to be that person on the outside, first of all, and I certainly hate to see other people in that position. And I have the ability to, and the confidence now to be able to just pull that person in and go, hey man, you're part of the group. Let's go. So those are my superpowers.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because I have definitely seen that last one firsthand when, we're in our group and we'll do a breakout session in a group of, 3 or 4 or 5 people. And I've seen Mark engineer a conversation where he will ask people questions or bring somebody into the conversation on purpose. And I could tell that he's just like, I want to get this person's ideas. They have value, but I also want to just get them involved. So that's pretty interesting. That's interesting indeed.
So now, what are your superpowers?
Yes. So this is something that I'm very passionate about. As you said, we've been thinking along these lines for a while, and the book really brought it in really nicely for me. So I've come up with 4, and I want to show
overachiever.
Yes, 4. I want to show you guys. I feel like it's going to be assumed that I use these with my business, but I also want to show you how I use them with my family life, because I feel like that's where it's not going to be assumed. And people go, oh, Adam, yeah, he does the fitness thing. He can apply that because that's what he does. But I want to show you how I apply it to my family as well.
That's great.
So first superpower is identifying problem areas and areas of inefficiency. So if I notice that there's a kink in a process or something's inefficient, I like to first just hone in on that. The second superpower is creating something new to solve problems. So I see that there is that area of inefficiency, that problem area, and I love to create new stuff, new solutions. Take something where there's an issue and there is nothing, and then create something. And that, like Mark said, that's something where I just assumed that everybody could do that. But I've got people on my team, they're like, how the hell did you think of that thing to do? So that is definitely a superpower. I also love creating systems. I love creating structure around ideas, which I have discovered through talking with other kind of high energy, entrepreneurial type people, type A personalities, that's not so common. People like to create new ideas, but then also put structure behind it. Usually it's one or the other. So that is a serious advantage that I feel like I have. And then the fourth superpower is just coaching and motivating people. When it gets down to it, I like to be on the front lines. I like to get a hold of people and implement those systems and teach them how to, kind of go through that process. Like Mark talks about this in the book, where each individual superpower, it's great to understand those individually. But if you can figure out how to use them in synergy and kind of create a superpower process, then that ramps everything up to a whole new level. So if you guys, like with my business, I'll give you an example. Since I've been doing the podcast, since I've been, doing the Facebook group and all this stuff, I get a lot of messages through social media on, I'm confused about where to start. There's so much out there. Can you help me? I'm just not sure where to start. So that is a problem that I've identified. That's an area of inefficiency. People are spinning their wheels. So I'm in the process of creating something new to solve this problem called my Transformation Foundation course. So that's going to be a 14-day course. I'm putting it together right now. And that's my thing that I created out of nowhere. And then I'm creating a system around a system of workouts, videos, nutrition, how to bring that to everybody, how to get that message out there. And then eventually we're going to be on the front lines coaching people and motivating people on how to go through the process. So that is the 4-step superpower process with my business. Now, I also want to talk about with my family life, just to prove to you guys, and I feel like that's another litmus test with your superpower is, can you apply it everywhere? Not just with business, not just with your number one goal. Can you apply it in different areas of your life? So an issue that I think all parents have is, I've got a 6-year-old son, I've got a 2-year-old daughter, but my 6-year-old's getting kind of rowdy, and we have to start figuring out how to, implement some discipline in his life and keep him in check a little bit and not let him just run wild all the time. Because he's got my energy, and that's the issue. He's got my energy.
Your poor wife.
Yeah, he's got my energy in 6-year-old form, which may be very similar, some people would say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how is that different?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. I'm just taller for now. So we've been thinking of different ways, and nothing's really working. So that was the identifying the problem area. He's getting a little bit rowdy. We're having a hard time controlling him. He's acting up a little bit. So I created something new to solve the problem. I bought a $20 dry erase board that is like 10-inch by 10-inch square. And then I created a system where he gets checks for doing good boy things. He gets strikes for doing bad boy things. And then if he has what we call a good boy day he doesn't have 3 strikes, he's got enough checks on the good boy side. Then we put, Monday was a good boy day. Tuesday was a good boy day. If he gets 5 in a row, then we go out and we get him ice cream or a toy or whatever. We go and do something that he wants to do. So that was the system. And then, of course, we have to kind of coach him and motivate him and explain to him how it all works. And when he gets a strike, we say, all right, here are the consequences of the strikes. You're not going to get your good boy day. So that's 1 strike. You don't want to have that second or third one, because then you're not any closer to achieving that goal. So that's how I apply it. That's just one example of how I apply the superpowers in my own life. So what do you think, Mark? Did I pass the test?
Absolutely pass the test. And I'm glad you brought up that idea that your superpowers apply to different areas of your life. And I always use the three big buckets. We have work, we have our home life or family life, and then community, whatever that means for you. Some people that means their own neighborhood, it means their city, it means their country, or it could mean, the church group you belong to or whatever. It doesn't matter. We all have communities we belong to. So I think one of the hardest things, and I'm so glad that you've thought about this for your personal life, because I think that's one of the hardest places for people to figure out if their superpowers actually work there or not, because we have such defined roles and responsibilities when we enter our house every day that we end up doing those things because we have to, right? I've got roles and responsibilities as a dad, as a husband, as a father, as a son to my parents who live nearby us, all of that. And so I have to do those things. I guess I don't have to, but I want to do those things. And sometimes I have a harder time going, okay, how do I apply my superpowers of simplifying things to help my kids or to help my wife out or whatever? So you have to sometimes be a very thoughtful and proactive about where do those apply, and can I ratchet them up a little? There are always hints, I think. You tend to use these things as a default somewhat, but could you use them more and use them more proactively? Is there a way that I can do that within my own household or my own community? Because work seems to be the easy one. Like I can apply this to work and I can totally see. It's like pushing a button and seeing what happens, right? If I use my superpower at work, then I know that something's going to happen. If I use it at home, I may not, especially when you have teenagers. They don't always respond. You know what I mean? And they don't necessarily respond to your superpowers the way that you'd like them to. But so I'm glad that you've taken that time to recognize that if you're proactive about it and use those, they can have impact everywhere.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's a real shame with our society is, like you kind of mentioned, people get home and they're on autopilot and they're not, like they're kind of burnt out from the workday and they apply the superpowers. Yeah, I can do that. But then they get home and it's like, I'm on autopilot. These are the defined tasks and roles. This is how I act. And, I eat dinner with the family and then we put everybody to bed and it's the same routine all the time, instead of, I really challenge people, apply what you're passionate about to your family life and see what happens. And you may have some fear of ruffling a few feathers, and like another obsession that I have recently acquired is I want to find out how energy efficient I can make our house. And I'm on this like mission to see how low I can get our electric bill. Because I've been people that follow the podcast and the blog know I've been reading the MrMoneyMustache.com blog. Yeah. And it's just like, oh my God, this is great. So getting my wife on board with things like hanging our laundry out in the sun to dry instead of using the dryer, like she's a little slow to adapt to these things. But, I've had these conversations with her because I'm again creating systems and trying to coach people on it. But, coaching your spouse, coaching your family, it can ruffle a few feathers. So you have to approach that in a different way. You're not bossing them. You're having conversations, and it's going to be a two-way street. There's some give and there's some take. So don't be afraid to have those conversations, though, and see if you can apply those superpowers.
One of the things that I'm starting to explore now that I've kind of gotten through this first phase of this work of defining this idea of ordinary superpowers is, now how do I help other people discover their superpowers? Like, that's obviously my life's work at the moment. But even in my own house, I feel like it's part of my role now to help my wife and my kids discover and start proactively using their ordinary superpowers as well. And do it in a way that I'm not telling them what to do, or I'm not, pushing them a direction they don't want to go, but trying to recognize and acknowledge those things in them so that they start to see it in themselves. And the same with at work, like a lot of people will pick this up and they'll go through this for themselves, but then they start thinking, wow, my coworkers or my team or my employees, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could get them on board with this idea? And I've done this with my own team at work too, where I've obviously made them read the book because I'm the boss and I can do that.
Yes.
But we had a little book club about it. They all read the book, and then we shared our superpowers. We talked about, the other things that this brought up for them as individuals in their personal life and their professional life and their community life. And it was so eye-opening to see, like, to hear these stories about what they feel like their superpowers are. And I've been their boss, most of these people, for 4 or 5 years now, and I learned a lot of new things about them. And now I'm able to go, okay, Jason's really good at this. Like, this is one of his superpowers. I'm going to start feeding him more of that kind of work. And Leah's really good at this. So I'm going to start making sure that she has a lot of, more of that kind of work to do. And I can also get things off of my plate that way to say, look, these are all things I used to be doing, and they're not my superpowers, but they're Jason's superpowers, or they're Leah's, or they're Holly's, or whoever else is on my team, right? And it can kind of transform a team or a workplace, and even a family, I think, to a certain degree, where you start getting people aware of what their superpowers are, and they start having impact, and they start liking that, and they do more of it. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing. It's kind of getting people to use their powers for good instead of evil. That's part of one of the sort of sub messages of the book, I think, is, how do we get people to start having the kind of impact that really lights them up and changes the world? And it doesn't have to change the world. It just needs to change their world.
Yes. I love that quote in your book too, man. That's one of my favorite parts. It's, you don't have to change the world. You just have to change your world. That's the deal. All right. Little bit of a gear shift here, a little switch. Slightly. I want to know, since you have done some of my fitness programs, you're in this health and fitness mode right now, how have you been able to apply your ordinary superpowers to improve your health and fitness?
Oh, you know what? I thought about this question ahead of time. I was hoping you'd ask me something like that. Because, and I think you're so right on with your superpowers, and just watching you, both in person as well as, through your online programs, I see those superpowers of yours coming out loud and clear, for sure. And, it's really made me think of that, am I applying that in my health and wellness pursuit? And I am, my superpower of like exploring new things, like you're like the perfect person for me as a coach and as a fitness expert, because you're always doing something new. You're always putting new stuff out there. You're keeping new, fresh motivation. You're coming up with new challenges and new programs. I'm like, I have found my fitness place in the world with you.
Yes.
So like for me, as somebody who likes that sort of new thing all the time, even I went through the Hello Abs boot camp, and I'm going actually through it again. And just the way that you designed that and the way that you did that, I feel like it's brand new all over again, because it's 28 days of stuff, right? So I'm back I'm on day 2 now today. And it feels brand new, only I'm stronger this time. So that makes it feel new again. It's like, wow, I can actually do the exercises now. When the first time through, I was doing a fair amount of modification the first time through.
That's all right. That's all right, my man.
So yeah, that's probably the biggest way I've seen that, and for me, kind of looking at that, like that really lights me up and that feeds me. And that's probably something I haven't always applied to my health and well-being and my fitness in the past. Is I get into something, I just keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over, and then I lose motivation. When what I need to stay motivated is I need to keep it fresh. I need to keep it new. Because that's what really lights me up.
Yeah, that's a big realization too. And I know even in the forum, at one point during your first round in the boot camp, you had posted about getting a little bored with the diet, and I'm like, dude, dig into the recipe book, dig in. Let's try a new recipe a week. Let's get it going. So yeah,
and I have done that. In fact, that's one of the things that I think has changed in my home life is like using my superpowers at home. I love cooking, but I wasn't doing it because I was trying to keep things simple as I got through that first round of the program. But then I started introducing new stuff, and you gave me some ideas along the way, and I'm like, I've tried a lot of new things. And so now this time around, I feel like I have so much more in my toolbox, and I can pick and choose from a lot of different things, which keeps it a lot fresher now. Yeah,
that's great. That's awesome, man. I'm proud of you. All right. Now I want to be considerate of your time, but I do have a couple last questions here for you. I feel like you and I both kind of sit in a similar space where people will have experienced a lot of different things, maybe being a little bit of a rut. Like with me, a lot of times people have tried a lot of other programs with no success. They catch word of me and, some of the people I've been able to help out, and they're like, hey, I've got nowhere else to turn. Can you help me? I feel like you're in a similar situation where people may be in that depression mode that total lack of passion for life right now. They've lost their spark and they're looking to shift gears. So let's say that some of our listeners are out there are a little bit stuck in that rut right now. What are a few suggestions that you would make to help them start to use their own ordinary superpowers to get their momentum back?
Okay. Well, first of all is breathe a little bit, take some time and realize this takes time. And especially if you're dealing with any kind of depression or even at the slightest level, like it just takes time to work your way through that, to get the help you need, to focus on some new things in your life. So we always want the quick fix. And I wanted the quick fix too. I was so stuck. I would go to our quarterly meetings at the coaching program that we belong to. And every quarter I would talk to our coach, Gina, and say, I'm still stuck. I'm still in that funk. And she'd look back at me. She'd say, just keep plugging away. Just keep doing it. Just keep coming back. You'll come out of it eventually. We'll get you back on track. And she was absolutely right. And so that's what the first thing I try to tell other people is just find something to invest yourself in and just stick with it and wait that period out a bit. Second thing I would tell you is seek out help. And that can be like, if you're in depression, seek out professional help, because that's the one thing that I found is I couldn't do it by myself. I made some great strides with focusing on my superpowers and getting more into that. But it wasn't until I added the counseling component in there where I really felt like I made some much faster, better progress and learned how to deal with that depression more. So I think if that's what you're dealing with, you have to help clear that out through some professional help. And the second part is seek out professional help in ways that will advance you, not just sort of clear out the cobwebs or the problems, but also advance you. Like, that's why I sought you out eventually. I'd known you for years before I finally said, you know what, I better do Adam's program. I better check this out. And I'm so glad I did, because I'm stronger. I'm more confident. I'm feeling a lot better about my health and well-being and my nutrition and fitness. So those are some things you can do quickly. Now, focusing on your superpowers, getting those up and running, I actually have 6 questions that you can ask yourself to identify and get those moving for yourself. And I'll go through this quickly, but what I can do too is I have a free chapter that, and when authors give out a free chapter of their book, they usually give out like the intro chapter, which gives you like maybe a flavor of their writing style or whatever, but it doesn't give you any meat. Well, I decided to give away chapter 4 of my book, which is
nice.
how to discover your superpowers. So I'll give you these 6 questions here, and then if you're interested in diving deeper and actually doing the work, you can go download that chapter at my website, and I know you'll include the links and all that in your podcast. So here's the questions. Number 1, figure out, what am I always doing? What are the things that I always sort of default to, given the space and time to do whatever I want? What am I always doing? Or when I'm at work and I'm in a meeting, like, what do I always sort of default to? What's the role I always play? So that's one way to start identifying your superpowers. The second question to ask yourself is, what do people always ask me for help with? For me, one of those things was technology problems, right? Turns out it's not a superpower, but it is one of the things people always ask me for help with. So it was worth exploring to see if it was a superpower. They also ask me to help simplify things. They also, people like to stick a microphone in front of my face because I have no fear of public speaking. So those are also things that indicated what might be a superpower for me. The third question is, what do you always feel compelled to volunteer for? When you're in a PTA meeting or you're at in your company meeting and they're starting to organize some big initiative at work, what are those tasks or roles when they start asking for volunteers? Which ones do you feel like you ought to raise your hand for? Not out of obligation because no one else is doing it, but because you know that you've got a skill in that area. Another flag that might be a superpower for you. The fourth question, what do you do that other people admire? And another way to ask that question is, what do people compliment you about? When they say, gosh, you're so good at doing that, or Adam, you're so good at motivating people, or Mark, you're so good at simplifying things. Like that, when people compliment you, they're acknowledging that you have a talent or skill that they probably don't have, or at least not to the degree that you do. The fifth question, what do you do that makes a positive difference? We know we all do things where if we perform an action or we use a talent or ability, that it actually helps and changes someone's life for the better. It could even be in a small way. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering or world-changing. It could be the smallest thing. But by using that talent, I make a difference. So identify what those are. Some of those could be your superpowers. And finally, what do you enjoy doing most in the whole world? If you could do anything, what would you spend your time doing? Now, there's a difference between your passions and your superpowers sometimes. Passions can be those things that, we just love doing, but we may not have a superior skill in. So you have to identify, like, is it a passion? Is it a superpower? Or is it a little combination of both? I'm not saying your passions can't be a superpower. They totally can. But sometimes those two things are separate. So you have to figure out, like, what are my superpowers? Can I apply them to my passions? Or do I need to be, pursuing my passions a little bit separately and using my superpowers in other parts of my life and finding proactive ways of using those? So that's how I would get started, is I would start asking those 6 questions to identify what my powers are. And then I would start looking for ways to proactively use those powers in different parts of my life.
Dude, you just rocked it. Mark just rocked. That was a mic drop moment. Every once in a while we have one of those in the old podcast here, and that was definitely one. I've been taking some serious notes here, so I'll be sure to include my notes in the blog. And Mark had mentioned the free chapter. I highly recommend you guys do that. Mark, let's give away your social info right now. How can people connect with you? Website, social media, where are we at?
Best place to reach me directly, my website is Mark Henson, MarkHenson.me. And everything about me and the book is all there on the website. I blog on a regular basis. I put out videos on a regular basis about creating a superpowered life and using your ordinary superpowers. My main social media is Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me at Mark Henson or Mark B. Henson on Facebook. I have a personal page as well as a more the author page or whatever they call it on Facebook. So either connect with me either place there. Until they're full, I'll use both of them. And then I'm on Instagram too, but that's more for fun and kind of behind the scenes peeks and things I find interesting. But I love Instagram because I'm a very visual person too, so it's a fun place to connect. But I don't do as much of the professional type stuff through that as I do through Facebook and my own website.
Yeah, and I really enjoy your Instagram account. You're always taking really cool pictures and sharing funny things. Mark's got a great sense of humor, if you guys haven't figured that out yet. And so I really enjoy that. So I would recommend you checking out Mark's Instagram. I will link to every piece of social media and web material that you've got in the blog and in the show notes on the podcast. So you guys can check that out. You can get the free chapter of the book. Mark has also agreed to do a little bit of a book giveaway challenge here. So
let's give away some books.
Yes. So here's what we're going to do. I've been trying to hit you guys up to give me a review of this podcast, a rating and a review on iTunes, because that helps the show rise up in the rankings, and then iTunes will expose it to more people. And that's the mission. So what we're going to do is, if you guys go on iTunes and leave a review, mention episode 46 with Mark Henson or Ordinary Superpowers, just so I know that this was the episode that you were talking about. Now, I can't look you up through iTunes, so I need you to join my free Facebook group also at www.defeatthecheat.com. Mark is in there. You can interact with him in there as well. He's posting about how sore his abs are and all the workouts he's doing. So you can interact with both of us there. It's a great free group. I'm talking about it all the time, but if you're new to the show, you need to check that out. So post a review and a rating on iTunes of this show, and then join the Defeat the Cheat group, and maybe even put up a post there like, hey, I just reviewed the podcast, or just copy and paste the review that you get so I know that you did it. We'll do a random drawing and give out 3 books. 3, is that good, Mark?
Let's go 5.
5 books. Oh, what a guy. So we're going to give away 5 books out of that random drawing. I'll do it in the next week. So within the next week, I know people kind of progressively listen to the podcast. We will do this towards maybe the 1st of July. We'll do the drawing. So July 2017, for those of you that are behind on the podcast. Shame. But so we'll do that as well. Mark, I just want to take a second to acknowledge you. You've been an awesome friend, an awesome business buddy for me, an awesome guest on this show, an awesome client as well, of course. But I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge you for what you've accomplished here. There are so many people out there that dream of getting their message out there, but they never muster up the courage to actually do it. And my friend, you are successfully delivering that message, and it's making a huge positive impact on the lives of everybody that you get it in front of. And that number grows every single day because you're working your butt off. And I've known you for a long time. You always bring that positive energy to every interaction. And, I'm just super proud of you, my man. So that's just something that I wanted to get out there. And I just really appreciate you putting this message out there, putting this book together, and coming and sharing it with my audience.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing the message. That means a ton to me. And, you never know the value sometimes of things that you invest in or places you go or groups you belong to until long after the fact sometime. And this is one of those instances where you and I have connected and we have been supporting each other and we're trying to help spread each other's words around. And it's I never would have guessed that or pictured that, 4 or 5 years ago when we were sitting in the same room. I don't know. It's just one of those really cool things to me to see that sort of blossom and that relationship sort of change and evolve over time into ways that are super supportive. And, we do all this, you do so much for free and I do a lot of things for free. And we're just, I think we both have the sort of philosophy of, man, treat people well and everything else will take care of itself. And I think that's one of the reasons why I connect with you so much is that you're just one of those kind of people. And I'll just put a quick little shout out to remind people to go do that review for you. Because I know sometimes every podcaster in the world says that, right? Go leave a review. It helps. It helps. But I will put a challenge out to your listeners that if they're listening to you, I know that you're helping them. And if Adam's helping you, why wouldn't you go do that? And why wouldn't you go do that right now? Because he's made a difference in your life and you have the chance to help other people that he can reach by going and doing that. So I'm just going to throw that out there as an encouragement and a little challenge to people to get out there and make sure that they do that review for you because, man, you deserve it. This is an awesome podcast.
I appreciate that, man. I think that we just officially had to rename this episode the Bromance Edition. So, and I'm sure it won't be the last one. Bromance Episode 2 coming soon. So guys, high energy as promised. Mark brought it. He dropped a lot of knowledge on us today. Hopefully you took as many notes as I did. If you didn't, check out the blog. All my notes will be there. And, as always, we have to apply what we're taking notes on. Don't just listen for entertainment. Try to apply at least one thing. So think about the next 24 hours. You've probably had a lot of ideas spark up, and think about over the next 24 hours, what's one thing that you can do, one action step that you can do to start making progress and find your ordinary superpowers and start applying them. All right. So as always, I want to encourage you guys. I want you to get out there and own it. Every meal, every workout, every day. I will see you on the next episode. Hey, before you guys head out, I just want to remind you really quickly to come and check out my free Facebook support group, the Defeat the Cheat group. You can head on over to www.defeatthecheat.com. That will redirect you directly to the place where you can join our free Facebook support group. It is awesome. These people are on fire. If you guys struggle with being consistent with your nutrition and your fitness, and you need a little bit of support, a little bit of mojo, a little bit of help, we've got it for you. We've got your back. All nutrition plans, all workout systems are welcome. There's no judgment there. It's no, our program is better than your program. It's about following the program and supporting you on your own transformation journey. I'm telling you, it's awesome. We're doing 14-day challenges. We're sharing recipes, motivational quotes, tips. Every day there's something on there that's going to inspire you. I guarantee it. So come on over, check it out, www.defeatthecheat.com. We'll see you inside the group.